Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The Manor of Delcourt, located in the wooded heights of Westchester, stands like Avery Castle, majestic and solitary, surrounded by centuries-old cypress trees and long white gravel paths. The exterior exudes grandeur and opulence: Corinthian columns, wrought iron balconies, imported French stained glass, and an automatic gate flanked by marble lions. But inside, silence reigns. A heavy, charged silence, as if frozen in the crystal of the chandeliers. Emily, a discreet but formidable heiress to an international hotel empire, lives there alone with her son, Jules, since the sudden death of her husband, Thomas Delcourt, taken by a heart attack during a business trip to Dubai. This loss, which occurred overnight, left Emily shattered, but she quickly enclosed her pain under a shell of demands and control. Every corner of the mansion, impeccably decorated by a Parisian architect, is an attempt to control the chaos. She doesn't cry. She manages. She optimizes. But none of this is enough to reach Jules. 9 years old, diagnosed with Asperger's type autism with high sensory sensitivity, Jules is a child with a shifty gaze, with a vast but hermetic inner world. He doesn't speak. He doesn't react to his first name. He spends hours staring at world maps, tracing imaginary routes between capitals, aligning flags in a mysterious order known only to him. He loves shapes, flags, the sounds of certain languages he hears in the documentaries his father made him watch. He seems impervious to human contact, but sometimes reacts to details no one notices: a syllable sung in Italian, a geometric pattern on a box, a deep voice in an Arabic film. Emily has tried everything: renowned speech therapists, private psychiatrists, Swiss occupational therapists, and stays in specialized clinics in Europe. The results are meager. She's been told repeatedly, "Your son is intelligent, but he may never communicate like other people." So she decided to buoy everything, try everything, give everything away, until he breaks that invisible wall. Until he says one word to her. Just one. She loves him with all her being, but she doesn't know how to reach him. So she continues to build this luxurious cocoon, as protective as it is suffocating. When Rosa Martinez when she first enters the gates of the estate, she is just another name on a list. One more housekeeper among those recruited through a high-end agency in Manhattan. Emily isn't expecting anything in particular. She wants someone discreet, efficient, punctual, silent, no intrusion, no inappropriate initiatives. Just a clean house and invisible staff. Rosa ticks all the boxes. Silent, with a soft gaze, and a soft step. She speaks little, listens a lot. She knows how to make herself invisible in the manor's vast, gilded spaces. But behind her measured gestures lies another woman. Before emigrating, Rosa taught modern languages in a public high school in Ciudad Juarez, in northern Mexico. Passionate about intercultural communication, she had built an innovative program to introduce children to world languages from elementary school onwards. She spoke 9 languages fluently: Spanish, English, French, Italian, Portuguese, Arabic, Japanese, Swahili, and Russian. But her life was turned upside down after a wave of violence hit her city. Her husband disappeared. She fled with her daughter, and everything she knew how to do. In the United States, her degrees are worthless. She cleans, she cooks, she shines the floors. But in her heart, language remains a light, a bridge, a possibility. What she notices about Jules is unlike anything she's seen before. At first, she simply walks behind him, silently. But she observes his attention to detail, his maniacal care for aligning objects, the fact that he touches the same flags several times, but never the same words. One day, while vacuuming, she saw him move his lips while staring at an Italian cartoon video. Another day, she heard him whisper something in Spanish while she was humming a Mexican nursery rhyme in the kitchen. And there, a doubt crosses her mind. What if he was not cut off from the world, more simply immersed in a language that no one around him speaks? What if classic structures only reinforce the distance? She doesn't tell anyone. Not yet. But in her heart, something lights up. She begins to speak to him, gently, in several languages. In small games. She names the colors of the flags in Swahili, the geometric shapes in Japanese, the countries in Portuguese. She leaves colorful maps, which she has drawn herself, lying around in the hallways. And she waits. Without pressure. Without expectations. And Jules reacts. Not with words. With looks. With gestures. He follows her with his eyes. He listens to her. Sometimes he taps out a word she just said. He doesn't run away. Heste. For Rosa, it's clear, this child understands the world. He decodes it in his own way. He just needs a code that speaks to him. And that code is language. That day, the sky over Manhattan was heavy with low clouds and a damp April wind. Emily had left her meeting early. A discussion about the renovation of the Delcourt Hotel in Miami had gone awry, and for the first time in a long time, she felt empty. Useless. She drove home in silence, staring at the scenery passing by the tinted windows of her black sedan. That evening, the manor was quieter than usual. After much thought, Emily asked Rosa to join her in his office, an austere room upholstered in bottle green leather, with thick curtains, lit by a single desk lamp. Rosa entered, hands clasped in front of her, looking calm but cautious. She sensed that something had changed. Emily looked at her without smiling, her gaze impenetrable. Emily, calm, but cold voice, why did you decide to teach my son languages without my permission? A silence fell. Rosa met his gaze, not arrogantly, but with quiet dignity. Rosa asked, I didn't impose anything. He was listening. He started repeating. So I continued. I didn't mean to offend you. I just followed what I felt from him. Emily stood there for a moment, then relaxed the tension in her shoulders. Her voice cracked slightly as she whispered. Emily, offend. You made him talk. You broke the silence. And I don't even know what to feel. A shudder passed between them. Rosa didn't answer. She waited. Respectfully. Humanely. So, in this office filled with files, contracts, and figures, Emily felt for the first time that her power was useless here. What she needed, it was not a strategy, nor a therapeutic plan. It was of presence. Of intuition. Of connection. She took a deep breath, licked her lips, and lowered her eyes. In a low tone, she finally said. Emily, I hired the best. I spent a fortune. And it was you, a woman I barely listened to, who woke my son. I need you. Jules needs you. And I think I need to learn to be there, too. Rosa, moved, took a step closer and simply replied. Rosa, you're already here, Madame Delcourt. Tonight, you are. That's all that matters. A heavy, but restorative silence filled the room. That evening, for the first time in years, Emily felt neither alone nor helpless. She felt mother. Really. When she crossed the threshold of the manor, she didn't announce her presence. She wanted to immerse herself in the quiet of the house, have some tea, and then perhaps, by reflex, go see Jules, even though he no longer looked up when she entered the room. But as she climbed the marble staircase, an unusual sound rose from the ground floor. A soft female voice, humming in Italian. It wasn't a pop song or a familiar lullaby. It was an old nursery rhyme, with a lulling melody, flowing like a stream. Then, a sound even more unexpected, laughter. Light. Hide at a child's laugh. Emily stopped, frozen. She went back down the stairs, silent as a cat, the heels of her pumps in one hand to keep from making any noise. As she walked down the corridor, she felt her heart beat faster. She approached the large living room and stopped just inside the half-open doorway. The scene she saw struck her right in the heart. His son, Jules, sat cross-legged on the carpet, his cheeks rosy, his eyes wide open, bursting with inner light. In front of him, Rosa, sitting on her heels, held a series of handmade cards, illustrated with pictures and words. She pointed to one, then said softly, "Ice cream, baby, sky." She waited, leaning towards the child with loving patience. And then, Jules said a word. "Child." It was barely a whisper, but clear. Assured. True. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Her heart sank so hard she thought she might fall. She pressed one hand against the wall. It's been 4 years that she hadn't heard a single word come out of her son's mouth. Noises, murmurs, sometimes grunts, yes. But never a word. Even less a word in a foreign language. She stood there, paralyzed, watching Jules smile shyly, brushing his fingers over the cards as if he were caressing something precious. Rosa only encouraged him, gently, without loud praise or sudden gestures. She respected the child's rhythm. She seemed to understand it. Read it. Emily backed away slowly, her heart in knots, her eyes moist. She went upstairs silently and stood there in the corridor of the West Wing, unable to move. Emotions mingled within her, admiration, jealousy, guilt, hope. Who is she, this woman I've barely looked in the eye? How did she succeed where dozens of specialists have failed despite my thousands of dollars? A few days after her decisive conversation with Rosa, Emily made a decision that she thought would be decisive, to offer Jules a new educational environment, more humane, more flexible. She had heard about the St. Armand Institute, a private school known for its personalized approach to neurodevelopmental disorders. The school was said to have highly qualified staff, small class sizes, and a green campus conducive to sensory development. She used her contacts and secured an appointment within 48 hours. In the morning, she dressed in a simple but luxurious suit, carefully braided her hair, and carried a folder containing Jules's assessments, a video of his interaction with Rosa, and some teaching suggestions. The Dr. Lawrence Bellamy, director of the institute, received her in a vast office where every object seemed to exude prestige: antique moldings, a globe, framed diplomas, a collection of pipes on a shelf. He was a man in his 60s, with an upright bearing, a calm but sharp voice, dressed in a pearl gray suit. Emily, initially confident, unfolded her argument. She spoke about Rosa, about Jules's awakening through languages, and about the effect of sounds and rhythms on his cognition. She showed the video where Jules pronounces bambino, and spoke about cultural inclusion, an intuitive approach, and melodies as catalysts for expression. Bellamy remained impassive, his hands crossed. Dr. Bellamy, with all due respect, Ms. Delcourt, teaching 9 languages to a nonverbal child is absurd. He needs stability, not confusion. Too much stimulation kills integration. He needs to settle down. Structure. Frame things. What you're proposing is poetic, perhaps, but hardly scientific. Emily felt heat rise in her face. She had heard this condescension 1,000 times, in other spheres, but never when it came to her own child. She tried to resume. Emily, what you call poetry, I call a breakthrough. My son spoke. For the first time in 4 years. And he did it in a multilingual, fluid, musical context. Perhaps this is precisely what classical approaches refuse to see. Bellamy cut her off with a gentle but firm gesture. Dr. Bellamy, I understand your emotion. But the St. Armand Institute works on validated protocols. We cannot experiment on a case-by-case basis. She understood. Not that he was refusing her project. But that he was refusing Jules. He wasn't a student, to him. He was a risk. An unpredictable challenge. And this kind of children, in prestigious establishments, we marginalize them with polite smiles. That night, Emily didn't sleep a wink. She got up, walked through the empty corridors of her mansion, and entered Jules's room. He was asleep, a map of Africa lying beside him, his finger still pointing at Nigeria. She sat on the edge of the bed and looked at him. Not like a worried mother. But like a clear-headed woman, ready to face a world too slow to change. She understood that if she wanted Jules Fleuris, she had to create earth and air that he needed. Early in the morning, the first pink rays filtered through the large kitchen windows. The smell of warm bread hung in the air. Rosa, as usual, was already up, preparing breakfast. She was pouring milk into a bowl, humming a Portuguese song under her breath. Emily entered, without makeup, her hair hastily tied back, and her dressing gown in. But her gaze was clear. Resolute. She stood for a moment, hands in her pockets, then said bluntly, "Emily, what if we created our own school, right here, in the house? Not a real bureaucratic school. A free, flexible place. Where Jules could learn at his own pace. Where other children like him could come. A place where music, languages, and difference wouldn't be a problem, but an enrichment. And you would be at its head." Rosa, frozen, her hand hovering over the bowl of milk, slowly turned her head. Her eyes shone. She searched for words. But none came. Instead, a tear rolled slowly down her cheek. Then another. She had never dreamed so big. She had fled war, grief, humiliation, menial jobs. And now, this powerful woman, from a world so far removed from her own, was offering her the management of an educational project, in his name. She gently put down the bowl, wiped her hands on her apron, and said in a trembling voice, "Rosa, I'm not a doctor. I don't have an American degree. Emily, you have something that no certification can replace. You have the key. You knew how to listen to Jules. And I trust you." In less than 3 months, the manor's grand stateroom was transformed. Antique furniture gave way to modular spaces, floor cushions, wall maps, instruments from around the world. Ceilings were soundproofed. Interactive screens were installed. Multilingual libraries were filled with albums in Italian, Japanese, and Arabic. Rosa and Emily recruited a small team of dedicated professionals, a speech therapist passionate about alternative communication, a music teacher specializing in nonverbal children, a Haitian dance therapist, and even a semi-retired polyglot former diplomat. They named this project the Garden of Languages. A place where language is cultivated like a forest, where each child grows in their own way, according to the season. Jules was the first student. And he was no longer alone. What was once an austere living room, with thick curtains and a parquet floor so shiny you didn't dare walk on it, has become a garden of sounds, colors, movements. The walls are covered with interactive frescoes depicting continents, and each space is dedicated to a region of the world. One corner is decorated with Japanese lanterns, another is filled with the scent of Indian incense, and a third plays traditional African songs. Here, the children do not learn like in a traditional school, they touch, sing, rehearse, dance, and experiment. They name animals in Swahili by imitating their cries. They sing the Arabic alphabet with drums. They watch Japanese animated stories in their original version, subtitled with images, and the children learn to tell them in their own words. Teachers are there, not to impose knowledge, but to accompany awakening, to extend a hand without forcing the other to take it. At the heart of this unique ecosystem, Jules hatches. He no longer hides behind his cards. He uses them. He shows, he classifies, he explains. He discovers the joy of to transmit what he feels, even if it is not always in complete words. He begins to point to capitals on a globe, to associate animals with countries, to connect a word in Spanish to its Portuguese version. And above all, her it. Genuine, bright laughter that Emily had never heard before. He laughs with other children. He looks into their eyes. He listens when you speak to him. And sometimes, in an almost secret whisper, he responds. A day, Dr. Liang Nguyen, a speech therapist internationally renowned for her work on neural plasticity and communication in neuroatypical children, visited the facility. She was told about the project with skepticism, as if it were the whim of a millionaire looking for a miracle. But as soon as she enters the room, she stops. The colors, the music in the background, the vibrant calm of the space, the children engaged and peaceful. Nothing here resembles the schools she knows. She watches without intervening. Then she sees Jules. He sits in a circle with 3 other children. Next to him, a little girl of Korean descent holds a puppet. Jules whispers a few words to her in Portuguese. "Hello, turtle." "Hello, turtle," pointing at the puppet. The little girl laughs and answers in a mixture of Korean and English. "Annyeong, turtle." They laugh together, in an understanding deeper than any syntax. Dr. Nguyen slowly approaches Emily and Rosa. Dr. Nguyen, visibly moved, "I have never seen such spontaneous awakening. You are rewriting the rules." Literally. She stays for another 2 hours, takes notes, and has a long conversation with Rosa. The next day, she sends an email to colleagues, to a scientific journal, and then to a journalist from New York Times. In a few weeks, the story is making the rounds in the media. A millionaire mother and her housekeeper transform a mansion into a language school for autistic children. The Garden of Languages, where silent children learn to sing in 10 languages. When tenderness speaks louder than science. Reporters flocked. Families sent letters. Hundreds of desperate parents contacted the foundation, willing to travel across state lines to give their child a chance. Emily is invited to conferences, but she declines most of them. She prefers to remain in the shadows, financially supporting the project and organizing the opening of other centers. The first replica of the Garden of Languages opens at Chicago, in a former administrative building renovated with ecological materials. Then comes Montreal, thanks to a partnership with a bilingual university. Finally, Paris, in a renovated former nursery school in the 11th arrondissement. Each center adapts the languages and cultural references to its population. But the soul of the project remains the same: learn from diversity, listen instead of forcing, reveal instead of correcting. Rosa, once invisible, becomes an inspirational figure. Now, educational director Rosa Martinez, she gives lectures in universities, participates in international panels, writes a book, When the Children Taught Me to Speak, translated into 12 languages. She receives an official invitation from the UN to speak at a summit on inclusive and multilingual education. Before an assembly of ministers, researchers, and activists, she speaks, her hands trembling but her gaze firm. "Rosa, I didn't do this to be here today. I did it because I saw a child respond to me with his eyes. And I understood that silence is not emptiness. It's a language that we don't yet listen to." The audience rises. Long ovation. Today, the Garden of Languages is a foundation officially recognized, funded equally by the Delkertand Anonymous Donation Soft families moved by Jules' story. There are satellite programs in hospitals, modules for public schools, and collaborations with NGOs to adapt the model to developing countries. And every year, at the Westchester Mansion, Open Day brings together families, former students, and professionals around a large international buffet, multilingual songs and moving testimonies. Rosa still stands there, a colorful scarf tied in her hair, surrounded by children laughing and speaking in mixed languages. And in a corner, often, Jules, now 11 years old, reads a story aloud, in Italian. It was a quiet, hushed winter evening, with snow falling gently on the bay windows of the Westchester Mansion, blanketing the gardens in an immaculate blanket. In the sensory classroom, dimly lit by strings of soft lights, the children's laughter had long since died away. Rosa and Emily, still wearing their aprons, picked up the decks, put away the cards, closed the multilingual books they had read during the day. They worked side by side, in silence, in that complicity forged by months of trust, exchanged glances, courageous decisions. The floorboards creaked behind them. Emily turned around. Jules was approaching. He had grown. His step was still hesitant, but his gaze was sure. He advanced without a word, stopped in front of his mother, and held out a hand. Emily knelt down instinctively, her eyes wide. Jules gently placed his palm on his mother's cheek. A slow gesture, filled with tenderness. His gaze shone with an almost unreal brilliance, as if he carried the entire universe within his eyes. And then, in a calm, almost musical voice, he said, "I love you, Mom." In 9 languages. Emily held her breath. So he began. Each word, spoken carefully, with a unique resonance, became a jewel in the sacred silence of that room. I love you. 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 I am a Uibuki. I shitaru. I love you. Emily had never cried like this. She hadn't cried in years. Not even at Thomas's funeral. But now, she collapsed in his son's arms, overwhelmed by the simplicity of these words, by the miracle slowly cultivated, by the love woven language after language. Rosa approached. She placed one hand on Emily's shoulder, another on Jules's, and the 3 of them remained entwined, united by a truth that no diploma, no fortune, no system could have created. Love needs no language to exist, but all languages to flourish. 2 years passed. The Jardin de Langues had spread across several continents. Local teams, trained by Rosa and her colleagues, were adapting the model to different cultures. Hundreds of children had found their voice in these caring spaces. One morning, in the pages of the New York Times, appeared a open letter signed Emily Delcourt. On a white background, in elegant typography, she wrote. For years, I believed that money could solve everything. Control everything. Fix everything. I brought in the greatest specialists. I decorated rooms like clinics. I built a gilded cage, thinking it would save my son. But it was a discreet woman, a woman I initially ignored, who showed me the way. A woman who speaks 9 languages and whose gaze knew how to listen where no one was looking for anything anymore. She believed in my son when I no longer dared to hope. She taught me to love again, without fear. And she offered me more than a miracle, she offered me a mission. Today I know what it really means to educate. A few weeks later, during a major conference on inclusive education at Columbia University, Rosa Martinez, now recognized as one of the pioneers of multilingual education for neuroatypical children, took the stage in front of an audience of teachers, researchers, families and journalists. She held her speech, handwritten on paper yellowed by emotion. She looked up, took a deep breath, then said, I was invisible for years. I cleaned up the tracks of others. I passed silently through the houses, through the corridors, through the gazes. Until one day someone listened to me. Today, it is no longer me who speaks. These are the children who were said to be different, those who were judged to be lost, incapable, maladjusted. They speak. In all languages. And they have so much to teach us. A long ovation followed. And somewhere, in a classroom bathed in light, a little autistic boy traces words on a world map. His finger slides from Dakar to Rio, from Seoul to Lisbon. He pronounces the names slowly. With joy. With precision. He doesn't speak to please. He speaks because he wants to. And he smiled.